Welcome to the Brand Doctor Podcast, strategies that help entrepreneurs build reputable and profitable brands. Here's your host, Henry Kaminski Jr.
What's going on, guys? So today's episode is how to use your personal brand to grow your business. Everybody's been asking me this question. I have an amazing guest that's going to give you the answer. Before we get into it, this particular guest is an executive coach, business strategist, and facilitator. She's the founder of Your Choice Coach. I love that name. And she is a certified, I got to move this over a little bit, certified diverse supplier. Interesting. I don't know what that is. We're going to find out what that is. Right. And so Your Choice Coach helps organizations become more human to realize results. Really, really interesting today. So without further ado, I want to introduce Simone Sloan to the podcast. How are you?
Hello. How are you? I'm doing really well.
I'm doing amazing. It's a beautiful day in New Jersey. Just found out you're in New York City, so you know what I'm talking about. Absolutely. So let's get into today's episode. Okay. So my first question is, how'd you get into executive coaching?
Great question. You know, I'm a pharmacist by trade and come from the pharmaceutical industry and was traveling like 4 hours a day and stepped back and said, what am I really doing, right? And so I did a lot of research, just soul searching really, just to get to a point where I understood what my strengths were. I understood what my passion is. And I love business and I love the corporate world. However, what I didn't like was the fact that they didn't have this emotional connection. They can get results. Awesome. But then the how to getting results was always like a battlefield, right? And so I got into executive coaching, really focusing on emotional intelligence, understanding and how to leverage the business strategy, how to get people motivated to get things done, but also that emotional connection that's often too missed, stepped on or over in business.
Interesting. So you became fascinated with the human side of business.
Absolutely.
So this is perfect. So real quick, who is your target audience? Who do you serve the most?
You know, I work with solopreneurs as well as up to the Fortune 500s and companies. And when I look at that from that perspective, really with the solos and the smaller businesses, it's around the business strategy as well as emotional intelligence, which is really the key thing that is common throughout everything that I do. When I work with the mid-sized to larger companies, it's more of a team involvement and really around how do we create more inclusive cultures to get to that point where everyone can work with trust, collaboration, connection, and results.
Do you have a hard time with your marketing when it comes to talking to those two entities? Because those are two very, very different entities that have different issues. So answer that question first, and I got a follow-up question.
Sure. Well, what it happens is that, and that's the key thing around marketing is segmentation, right? And really understanding the needs for the smaller groups. You're not really talking inclusive cultures if you only have a culture of one. But what you are talking about is as they're building their companies, right? What they want to think about in terms of who they're hiring and how you want to interact with, even though you might be a solo, but you do have a team, your vendors. Right? Communicating with them and making sure that they understand what you're doing, how you're doing it, and so that way they can actually provide value to you.
Okay. Yeah. So I love that you mentioned segmentation because it's very, very easy to speak to one person than trying to speak to 4 or 5 different types of, ideal customers. And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up in their marketing and in their branding because they're trying to serve this vast audience. And they don't know what to say.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because your value proposition is going to change because your target audience is different. And so I know that for the mid-sized to larger, they're struggling with culture. That's my communication to that group in terms of inclusive cultures, right? Understanding the secondary theme is I get strategy. I've been in the corporate world and I get it, right? Yeah. And so really understanding how do you leverage your people? How do you leverage your business strategy, and how do you get the results that you want and be sustained as an organization?
Yes. That's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? So let's break the next question down into 2 segments, because now that we know that your target audience is SMBs, small to medium-sized businesses, and solopreneurs, what would you say the big challenge that solopreneurs have that seems to be the common denominator when they come to you looking for help?
That's a great question. Where do you begin? One, they understand their product or their service.
Right.
But in terms of running and operating a business, that's where they may fall down. Meaning, one is the business plan, right? They know that this is what they want to do, but they're putting structure around it so that way they have that model to work through. Also, how do I communicate myself and brand myself? And then that's a second element that I end up working with in terms of the communication. So that way it's very consistent across everything that you're doing and to whom you're speaking to, and clear. So people understand what it is. Check out all that jargon and make it as simple as day.
Okay. So they overcomplicate things. I may be guilty of that. I may not be guilty of that. Even the brand doctor overcomplicates things sometimes, guys. It happens. So
absolutely.
Completely understandable. It was funny. I just got back from vacation a couple of weeks ago, and I had some time to really reflect and step away from the business for a couple of weeks. And I did some soul searching. I did some thinking myself. And what I realized was there was a lot. I was trying a little too hard, I think. I was overcomplicating things. And when I came back and we had our first team meeting, once we got back, I explained how I'm gonna shed a bit of fat. And it's gonna take some time, obviously, because you don't lose weight like that overnight. But there's a few things going on, in the business that weren't necessary. And so we had to cut all that out and have that one clean message. And let me tell you something, the marketing has gotten better. The email marketing has gotten a little bit tighter, more enticing, more captivating. I'm getting responses back now like, wow, Henry, that email touched me. So I email a little bit more frequent than most people, right? Because my emails are kind of like bloggish, if you will. So there'll be something that goes on today and I have to get it out because, if I keep it in, I'll explode. But it has a business meaning to it. Like you're going to get some value out of it, right? And, I think when I was doing those before vacation, they were sort of, again, I got to drink my own Kool-Aid sometimes. It was towards a broader audience. And then when I started to really focus on who were the clients in the past that I really, really enjoyed working with and what were their challenges and pain points that they came to me with. And I started talking about that. More people like that started coming out of the woodwork. So just some tips there, guys, when you're thinking about who your audience is. Now let's jump to the challenges of the small to medium-sized company. Now you mentioned something that sometimes it's communication and it's culture. What are some of the commonalities that the SMBs come to you with that, they said, Simone, we need your help?
Sure. Well, as you know, as they're growing, right? And I think when you hit the tipping point of, say, 50 employees, right? And that's where rapid growth, you're hiring more people, and you end up losing that ethos that kind of got you there. And so it's kind of like that's a point where they want to regroup and say, what are we doing? What's our culture? What are our values? And how are we going to communicate that so we live that internally as well as we're growing to attract the right people that we want to the company. So I'm helping them look at the communications, their values, how to create more of an inclusive culture, and just kind of get a handle on those issues at that point.
Yeah. It's easy to lose track of that, I think, because as you're growing rapidly or you start to get busy, right? You start to lose track. I think that was one thing that I see a lot of my clients. They start to get this momentum and the business is growing, but the brand is like left behind. And people might be asking, well, what do you mean by that, Henry? Isn't your business your brand?
But and it's like people there's a disconnect too, because do they understand what you're trying to do? Do they understand your vision? Are they on board with you? They're coming to work, but do they have that sense of purpose and willing to go the mile with you,
right,
in that distance?
Right, and I'm a firm believer as more millennials enter the workforce. So I'm a millennial, but I'm on the older side of that spectrum, right? And one of the things that I believe is true is that millennials want to feel part of something bigger than themselves. And I think what's happening to business owners now is that they're forgetting to tell these millennial employees about why they're doing what they're doing. And you're not seeing the buy-in, you're not seeing the alignment from these employees.
Absolutely. And it's not just that they forget, it's that they didn't really have to, because it was a different reason for being there.
Aha.
Now it's a mindset shift to understand, oh, okay, how do we integrate and how do we include this new group and dynamics of what's happening, right? And I think that's where the disconnect is taking place.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, let's get into the meat and potatoes of today's episode. I have a tendency to go way off, and like that's a whole nother episode, Simone. You know that, right? So, right, we're gonna bring it back. We're gonna bring it back. So, the question that I have next is: a lot of folks are hearing the buzzword personal branding and personal brand. The question that I get constantly at events and conferences is, what should I invest in, my personal brand or my business brand? And they think that it's like this big, like two-dimensional thing, and it's really not. But so let me get to the point. The question is, as business owners, how do we leverage our personal brand? Because you're all about humanizing the business, right? How do we leverage our personal brand to help us grow our business?
Okay. Let's step back in terms of personal branding, right? And when you really look at what is personal branding, right? And it's not the marketing element, right? Because that's how you push out the message, but it's really kind of doing that self-reflection of understanding your core. And I always start with the core in terms of what are your values? What are the values? And then from there, really understanding what are your strengths? Where are your areas of opportunities? Right? What are the, and looking at where I need to grow in terms of that perspective, and doing kind of like a little SWOT analysis on yourself. So you start with your values, you have you understand your strengths, your areas of opportunities, right? And you really want to leverage what that is. And then from there, you're looking at it, okay, how do I communicate what I'm doing? Right? So that way it resonates throughout. So you have your values, you understand your strengths. How am I communicating it? What is it that you do? What is the value that you bring? And what are the benefits that people are going to, if they choose you, move forward with you? And then authentically being that, right, in terms of how you present yourself. So it's not this forced thing that you're doing, but because you start off with your values, it's a natural thing that you're actually just projecting out. And that's how I kind of look at it from that perspective. If who you are and what you do, then you're going to be all over the place in terms of how you want to be with your clients.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's this old Jim Rohn quote that hit me right in the head the one day, and he said, if you focus on your work, you will make a living. If you focus on yourself, you can make a fortune. And it's funny, I'm gravitating towards more of the personal development, soft skills books out there these days. I read this amazing, I'm a big Audible guy. So I'm not a big reader, but I'm a big Audible guy. And I read this, I listened to this book recently. I highly recommend you guys get it. So it's How to Talk to Anyone. Hold on, I got to pull this up.
Okay.
The name of the author is Leo Loud's. Awesome author. How to Talk to Anyone. 92 tricks to build big business. Something along. I can't read it because it's too small. But big book. Awesome book. And it was 92 soft skill techniques to really help communicate with other people. Like there's like the one upper, right? When you're at a party or at a business function, and you mentioned something in conversation, and that person did it plus jumped out of a plane while doing it, right? And like, is that good conversation skills? Like, you may not even know you're doing that, right? And so like, I'm really plus 91 other ways to really build relationships with the big dogs, right? Because I think that's I think a lot of people struggle with that.
I think that's a fair point, because business is all about relationships, right? And they're looking at, do I like you? Do I trust you? Do I want to do business with you?
Yes.
And believe it or not, as you being the business owner, you are the spokesperson, you're representing the branding of the business. So how you operate in terms of your integrity and thinking, saying, doing is everything that comes forward. But if you don't have that grounded in the get-go, you're going to be all over the place. People are going to be like, what does that person do again? What's that business? And everyone's going to they're all over the place, right? And so that's why I always start with the values piece first. And especially if you're in a team, it even resonates even further to get everyone's perspective on what their values are around the company and coming together collectively to create that holistically for the business as you move forward, because it's going to drive decision-making, who your tribe is, what in terms of the clients that you want to go after or not, right?
Yes.
And the kind of services and products that you want to create. So it all stems from that piece of the core.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And I think self-awareness is something that I believe a lot of business owners struggle with. If they are deficient in an area, right? They either sweep it under the rug, they don't address it, it keeps showing back up, and now you're you're knee deep in muck, and you're putting out fires all day long, and you keep pointing fingers, yet the culprit is you. And that's really hard to swallow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you think about it too, even if you're in the mid-sized organizations where you have teams and you're not confident as being a leader, and you don't know how to communicate, you don't know how to build that trust, you don't know how to have collaboration on the teams, it gets lost. The same thing happens, right? Yeah. And it happens.
Yeah. And it's a sin, because these people mean well. I truly believe everybody means well. I mean, there may be some crazy people out there. I gotta watch what I say. But at least the people that I let into my world, right, I believe that they mean well. They're either misinterpreted or, they don't think before they speak, and they're
that's
not
where
listening.
emotional intelligence comes in, right?
Right.
Really, how do we connect? How do you self-aware, like you said, in terms of really being self-aware? How do you communicate and that out? How do you build relationships of interpersonal, make decisions, and also the stress piece that comes into it? Because yes, we are busy. We're trying to put out many fires at once, but all the other pieces get influenced by that stress piece, how we make decisions, how we interact with each other, and how you express yourselves and being received on that end.
Yeah, totally. So I'm gonna shift gears here. We're gonna get into the doc's prescription. There's a couple of things that I want to point out here in this episode is this. If you really want to leverage your personal brand to help grow your business, this is going to sound like a really common sense thing to do. Simone, they call me the king of common sense.
Awesome.
Because the things that I come up with are like, duh, right? But I'm all about simplifying, because the world's complicated enough these days, right? So why don't we simplify things, right? If you want to leverage your personal brand and really grow your business with it, become absolutely childishly curious about the people you surround yourself with, whether it's your vendors, your employees, your team, other business owners, clients. Use that curiosity to learn more about them. You want to be the most interested person in the room. You got to be the most interested, right? And I'm a huge. As soon as I heard that, my life changed, because I was the one that didn't shut up. I got that from my mother. You walk into a room and she just didn't stop until we left, right? And then like, Mom, so what about so and so over there? Where's she from? I don't know. Because she never asked, right? She just did all the talking. And so, that bled into my personality a little bit. And it hurt. It hurt in the beginning of my career, because I would do all this talking. I wouldn't get any of the data that I needed to help solve their problem, whoever that client was. And that bit me in the ass so many times. We would get into big branding projects, and, we would come back with proofs, and they would be like, this is not what I signed up for, right? And had I done the proper research, I would have been able to avoid that. So, these days it's way different when it comes to doing that research. So be tremendously curious about the people that you're speaking with and who you're surrounding yourself with, and you're going to see a huge change in the way they interact with you. The second thing that I want you guys to pay attention to, and I can't stress this enough, is the self-awareness piece. Like really understanding where you are great and where you need some help. I remember when I was building out my team, I was horrible at project management. Like I was horrible at it, and it got me in a lot of trouble. It did. Then I hired my first project manager. That didn't go too well. I was like brand new to building the team, right? You gotta, right? And then my next project manager comes in, and she's been with us ever since, 4.5 years later. And she is phenomenal at keeping it tight, keeping it positive. And then her skill set started to freaking rub off on me, right? And then I started building my project management skills. So that's a perfect example of self-awareness. There may be other examples, like, when you're constantly interrupting people in conversation. I'll say it again, right? To be aware of that and what that triggers in the other person that you're talking to's mind. When you keep doing that, it goes a long, long way, right? There's like the root. There's the person, you, and then there's this root that goes that, right? And yeah. People forget about the root, right? And so being very consciously self-aware of what you're great at, what you're not at, and then delegating that out. Like that is the only thing that has helped me grow my business to where it's at today, is really finding those people in those key areas and dumping it out to them and letting them do what they love to do. Simone, would you add anything to it?
Yeah, I think that also in just being curious and just being self-aware about things, also looking at it just in terms of how do you attract, right? And what are you bringing in? Because that goes with the curiosity and the self-awareness piece. Mm-hmm. Because some people say, hey, I'm not getting the right clients. I'm not getting the right mentors or the coaches or whomever else is in there, but really thinking about what is it that you're putting, the energy that you're putting out there.
Yeah. What was it? One of the guys that I follow on Instagram, on YouTube, Patrick Bet-David, he was actually on the show a couple of weeks ago. He said, money hates bad attitudes. Mm. He's like, money can't stand bad attitudes. So if you have a bad attitude, money is not going to be attracted to you. Right? And I was like, you just kept it real and real simple, right? Everybody wakes up and they have their moods, right? You have your days, right? Right away. That's the first thing I think about. Even if I'm in a little bit of a funk, I'm like, money ain't gonna like this attitude. So let's change it.
Absolutely.
Let's change it.
Absolutely.
So I love it. And even so, from a brand identity standpoint, just to keep it, to follow up on what you said, a lot of problems that my clients have before they come to me is they have a great product, service, right? Or service, yet their brand identity, how they're showing up online, does not match the true value. They're not confident in their presence. And that really affects the quality of work that they do, the marketing that they put out, and how they position themselves out there. So if you want quality clients, you got to have a quality brand. You got to be what you want.
Absolutely.
So
you also get to deliver on that too, right? You have to deliver what you do and what you say. Absolutely.
You can't. That's the big thing. Like I used to have this little saying back in the day, and it ended with, well, here's how it was. If you want to charge the part, you got to look the part. Mm. Fair enough, right? However, you have to deliver the part too. And that was the part, that was the bolt on that I added to that little quote, because you can look pretty, and we've all hired those, and we've all dated them, and we all maybe married them, right? And then we find out what's under the hood.
Nice. Right.
And, you got a Ferrari with a Toyota engine in it.
But that's a loss of wasted time. Think about your ROI, your energy, the time, the money that's just been wasted, right?
Nasty.
And yeah, absolutely.
Set you back big time. And so, totally. Okay. So now questions from the community, right? So we have a question today, which I know a lot of my either you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on iTunes, or they struggle with this big time. Okay. So I struggle communicating my vision to vendors. And I always wind up with a product I'm unhappy with. Am I hiring the wrong people, or is it just me?
Yeah, we've all been there.
So with it a little, right? Like,
absolutely. I say combination. I'm not going to name, blame, shame anyone. It's a combination of things, right? Because when you're looking at it from your vision, have you done the due diligence to really communicate what that vision is? Is it clear in terms of people understanding what you do, who you're serving, the value you bring, and the benefits that you want to have your clients talk about? And if that's not clearly defined, then they don't understand what you're doing. It goes back again to the direction. How on top of it are you? Are you just really not being micromanager? That's not what I'm saying, but really being the owner of this to ensure that they understand from start to finish what their steps are and what's next. Right?
Yeah.
So I think those are the two things: is the communication piece around understanding and the due diligence that you've done to ensure that you've hired the right vendor for your team.
Yeah, it's so true. The one thing I would add to that, I believe, is empathy. Empathy. So if you're hiring someone to come in and redo your brand, or come in and reevaluate your team and diagnose and prescribe a better solution, right? Being empathetic to the fact that here's somebody coming in that knows absolutely nothing. Not to assume that they did all their homework on you, because some people don't. The pros, the all-stars versus the amateurs, that's what it comes down to, how well that person does their homework.
I think that, empathy is definitely one key piece of it, right? Especially when you're talking about emotional intelligence in terms of how people relate to each other.
Right.
Yes. And so it's a two-way communication that has to take place in order for that to happen, in terms of having respect for the person, both sides, regards, and then understanding what the boundaries are, like in terms of what you stated. Have they done the homework or not? And they should have done a level of homework coming into your understanding where you are, but also in terms of the due diligence on your part as the business owner too, in terms of doing your part to ensure that they're up to speed and understanding what you're doing, how you want it done, timelines, etc.
Yes. And that's where I say, as a solopreneur or small business that is putting themselves out there, whether it's on social media or any marketing platform, is to clearly identify what those things are: the who, the what, the how, right? And clearly identify that, because, when somebody comes to your website, you got about 8 seconds until they say, nope, not for me. So how quickly you could address those three things is really going to help you communicate and resonate with that person that's looking for what it is. I tell you, I'm doing this experiment. So I'm not a huge fan of emotional intelligence. No, I'm sorry. AI. What are you talking about? That's what we're talking about for the past week
here today.
Okay, so I'm not a huge fan of artificial intelligence. Okay. So the whole bot thing, like, I'm getting blown up right now in my Facebook Messenger from this guy who I'm friends with. Every day he's sending me a copy and paste botted message, and I want to just unsubscribe, but I don't want to hurt. He's going to know that I unsubscribed, but I got to tell him, like, this isn't working for me, because I know you are not sending me this message right now. But to my point, what I started to do on my website. So there's a company out there called Drift. I don't know if you ever heard of Drift. So Drift is an AI bot software that you plug into your computer, you plug into your website, and it brings up the little chat box at the bottom right. So the way I have it set up is, if somebody does type in a question, well, here's what it says. As soon as you come to my website, it says, "Why are you here and how can I help?" So people, as soon as they come, they see that and they type it in. And it's so cool. So what they type in goes right to my phone like a text message.
Nice.
And I just have to text them back. Like, it's that simple.
Nice.
And we have this communication. The point I'm trying to make here is this. Anytime somebody fills that out and they tell me exactly why they're on my page or on my site, gives me the intelligence that I need to create better marketing, create better messaging. So, and there's, we closed a $25,000 deal last week because the guy came to the site and he wrote, I want to build this consultancy. He's in the real estate space. I want to build this consultancy the right way. That's what he wrote. And I said, and then when we got on the phone, I said, why is that so important to you? Why is building your business or brand so important to you to build it the right way? And then we went down that rabbit hole and he came out with some stuff, which was pretty interesting. He's hired duds in the past. They didn't deliver, all these things, right? And this is just, I can't write fast enough because I'm like, had I not had that chatbot there, had I not gotten him to write that, I would have not asked that question and we would not have the understanding of why that was so important to him. So you want to use the AI? Go for it. Use the AI to be more human, not so much to save you on time or because you want to automate things, right? Use the AI to be more human and you'll see a difference. There's a big difference there.
Absolutely. Well, you'd use a favorite word, human.
That's it. I love it. So Simone, where can people learn more about you and how can they get into your world?
Sure. I am on LinkedIn. You can see me as Simone Sloan. My website is yourchoicecoach.com, or you can also reach out to me at simonesloan.com.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Simone, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Lots of fun. Thanks for having me.
I could go another hour and a half. Easy. So there you have it, guys. Another episode in the books. Hope you got some value out of it. Drop a quick little comment if you're watching this on YouTube, drop some comments. You got questions, drop them down below. I'd be happy to keep this conversation going. If you're on iTunes or on a podcast platform, don't forget to write a quick little written review if you're enjoying the content. I read every single one. I always give a quick little shout out on my social media channels when you do. And if you haven't checked out my website, uniquedesignswithaz.net, there is some great training there that we put together for you, absolutely free, that's going to help you grow and scale. And I share with you straight up the 5 ways that I help scale my business from 6 to 7 figures. And if you follow that template, I can promise you put in the work, you're going to be able to get there yourself. So have an amazing day, and I will catch you on the next episode. Take care.
You've been listening to the Brand Doctor Podcast with Henry Kaminski Jr. To get your appointment with the doctor, visit Brand Audit at www.uniquedesigns.net.